Hi, Dr. Idlewine. My name is David Boyd, and I am the graduate assistant at Terre Haute South with Jamie Nicander, and I work with Amy. Um, so, a little bit about me. Sorry, the camera's shaking. I'm sitting in the recliner. I am originally from Erie, Pennsylvania. It's about 7 to 8 hours away from here. It's a relatively small-ish town. It's about 100,000 people, so maybe twice the size of Terre Haute, but by no means big at all. It's just like a really big, small town. That whole 6 degrees of separation is more like four for Erie, so it's kind of interesting, but I once I finished high school in Erie, I graduated in 2004, and then I went on to West Virginia University in Morgantown. And my first 2 years I wasn't athletic training. I was just kind of hanging out, having fun. More of like a biology slash forensic science slash I don't know what I was doing major. And then I found athletic training and I went into that. So I graduated in 2010 with a degree in athletic training. Uh, had no intentions of going to grad school and then found a position back in Erie at a small school called Mercyhurst University. It's actually where Beth went to undergrad. That's kind of how I found out about Indiana State. So I finished there in 2012. I got a Master's of Science in Organizational Leadership. So after that, I went on to work men's basketball at Tennessee Tech University. They're Division One, about the size of Indiana State. They're in the Ohio Valley Conference as opposed to the Missouri Valley Conference. So um, I spent 1 year there and decided that Division One wasn't right for me right then. I enjoyed being a graduate assistant at the Division Two level and working there, so I was able to go back and work Division Two, pretty much everything at a really small school. Like high school, most high schools are bigger than this school called Brevard College in Brevard, North Carolina. Brevard is in deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's in western North Carolina, really close to Asheville and Tennessee, and not too far from Knoxville. I'd always tell people, "Oh yeah, I'm moving to North Carolina." They're like, "Oh, you're gonna be right near the beach?" Like, no, the exact opposite end of the state. So I was there for 2 years. My main sports, well, towards the end it got kind of fuzzy, but my main sports were men's and women's soccer, um, men's and women's soccer, men's and men's and women's tennis and softball. But towards the end, I was working spring football and men's basketball too. There was a little bit of a shakeup, so I got to cover a lot of different sports there. I had like 150 of my own athletes, so it was interesting. I kind of moved on to Indiana State because I was ready to do something else with athletic training, and I contacted the individual who was the clinical coordinator at Mercyhurst. That Beth knows him, and I know him. He's now at Indiana University, actually, which is a big rivalry, I guess. I know nothing about Indiana. I really don't care all that much, to be honest. So it was time to do something else because I was afraid that I was starting to get burnt out and I didn't want to get stuck or I didn't want to give up the job. I thought I was going to quit athletic training. And so that's sort of how I ended up here. I was directed towards Indiana State. I'm really glad I'm here now. Um, so hobbies and interests. I'm That's hard to answer because I'm perfectly content to just hang out and do nothing, mainly because, with as an athletic trainer, we don't get a lot of time to sit and do nothing, especially during the season or this past summer with oh, this interesting in this summer. That's all I can say, or all I will say. Um, but I'm kind of into some dorky stuff ish. I like science fiction ish stuff, sort of. I'm all over the place. I like sports. I'm into. Um, I got really into English soccer. My old room, one of the guys I lived with in Brevard was the women's head soccer coach, but he was a 40-year-old Japanese man who moved to England to learn English and coach and to become a football manager, as he calls it. So, yeah, for a Japanese man had an British accent. It's pretty fun. So he really got me interested in that. I'm I like to read. No, I'm not gonna read too much right now for just to read. That's for sure. Not until I'm done with school again. Um, I want to say the last really good book I read was The Hobbit. So see, I'm into fantasy-ish stuff and Doctor Who. It's probably one of my favorite TV shows right now. Um, but I really don't. I like the golf, but I just don't. I'm fine sitting, to be honest. Being able to be with friends, and right now, still meeting people, getting to know people in the program. I've only been here 2 months now, so I don't know a lot of people just yet. So goals for this class, I'm sort of I want to. That's hard. People always ask me stuff like this, or I'm not. I, uh, I don't know exactly what to say. I do want to learn more about joint mobs or mobilizations, or as I call them, joint mobs. It's a long story. It deals with one of my old gymnasts. So every time I see joint mobs, I always call them joint mobs, and people laugh at me. But I'd like to learn a little more about it, just because it's something that I know I'd have to say it's one of my weaker points, to be honest. I kind of know what to do with them, but that's only to an extent. And then once I get to a point where I'm kind of stuck, I'm like, oh, well, let's just move on to something else. So, more than anything, I guess I just want to get a pretty firm grasp on what joint mobs are, what joint and manual therapy and everything like that. So, but specifically, I'm kind of not sure. I I'm sure as I get into it, I'll figure it out. It's just this is I have to sit down and look at everything. I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Um, so one interesting fact I like to always throw out is that in the see it was last summer of 2014, I got bored and decided to drive to California. I just got bored and got in my car. It's a little more involved than that. At Brevard College, I was on a 10-month contract. In May of 2014, I had to go back to Erie, and it's 10 hours from Brevard to Erie. So I was in Erie for most of May, and cause it was my brother's graduation. I had a couple other things to take care of, and I um, so I was there. And I got back to Brevard, and I was sitting on my Brevard is about 9,000 people. It's a small retirement community, so there's not a lot going on in Brevard in the summer. So I was sitting on my front porch at like 8:30 in the morning, drinking a cup of coffee, and I'm like, well, now what do I do? I'm I'm in Brevard. I'm not going back up to Erie. I just came from there. I saw all my friends up there. I'm not going back up to the northeast area. So I'm like, okay. I got a hold of one of my old roommates who lived in Myrtle Beach, and I went to go see him for a couple days. And one of my other old I had five roommates, but there were six of us in this house in Morgantown. Um, and he's always like, "Yeah, come see me whenever. Always, you're always welcome." And so I called him up. And I'm like, "Hey, what are you doing? I'm gonna pass through. I'm gonna stop and see you." He's like, "I really can't right now. I'm fighting with my roommate, and I'm staying with my girlfriend, and I don't have anywhere for you to stay." I'm like, "That's Dave. Typical Dave. Always just how it always works." So I'm in Myrtle Beach, and my feet are literally in the Atlantic Ocean. I'm like, well, now what do I do? And I'm like, well, I have a cousin in Yuma, Arizona. Like, am I gonna do this? I'm sitting in my car, and I'm like, well, YOLO. And I got in my car, and 3 days later, I was in Yuma, Arizona. I went to San Diego for a day. So I had to make sure I got my feet in the Pacific Ocean. I went to San Francisco, stayed in a hostel for 2 nights, met four girls from South America, got to walk around San Francisco with these four really pretty girls and this goofy guy from North Carolina just wandering around. So that was fun. I was gonna go to the Grand Canyon, but I was way too tired. I was tired of sleeping in my car and sleeping in weird hostels, so I just kept on going, and I was on Interstate 40 for 2.5 days. So 6,223 miles in 10 days. That was probably the craziest thing I've ever done. So that's a little bit about me. There's probably a little more, but I don't know if you really want to know that much. I have a very dry sense of humor. If I say something and you wonder, is he kidding? More than likely I am. Just, it rarely am I serious. And if I am, you'll know. So, I look forward to meeting you too, and I'm going to do the Would You Rather game. So, have a great night.